I have to say, what annoyed me most was
otherwise it's
when
so hot and
I started bringing out and they started sharing more, like that's what they were learning. Like it's such a elegant thing.
Well, whose idea it was, but it's a good idea. How you doing, Ralph?
About the same.
I'm better than I was, but it's taking long to bounce back. Getting all the sucks.
Did you talk last night? Well, the last time she did, the last time. I like it. I can explain to people baseball. It's a thing that you go and watch that way you have something to do. Right, exactly. Yeah. It's a story
And you know where it is. I know where your house is. Yellow brick house. Yellow brick house. Just like the yellow brick house.
We usually go at 6:30. Basically they open the door at 7.
Lessons, kidding.
Good morning. Fine.
No buyer's remorse.
No, not really. I'm remorseless.
That's good. I know.
It was fun.
It was
acting like I have money.
Acting like what?
Acting like I have money.
I know. Oh yeah. I should have like I heard. I didn't even think about it.
I think unless you want to.
All right. I guess we're going to get started in a minute.
Yeah, it won't be long. It should be starting about now, in fact.
Yep.
Okay, well, I can announce that I have an extra ticket. Okay. And they can just meet me in the room.
Right.
Right, okay.
Start 7:30.
Oh, well, don't let us Okay.
Yeah, ask Lorna. I marked my program. See, look, we do this, and that. I marked mine.
So we're going to just stick we'll do the last one.
Yeah, we'll just stay up there. You might want to step up on the stage farther.
Oh, yeah. He comes out in the morning and it's like, sometimes he gets something to drop. The kids put on in the morning and he walks them to the bus.
That might be. Darn, you might as well stick around up there.
Morning. Welcome to the Auburn Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, located on occupied ancestral land in the Skokie Creek Nation. My name is Eric Scotch. I'm your service associate for today. Some of us are bringing our best selves to this space, and some of us are bringing our struggling selves, including pieces we might be ashamed of. All of us are welcome here, and all of us are loved. Some of us already have open hearts, and some of us aren't quite there yet. Because our hearts have gotten a little beat up this week, and we might have forgotten how to trust and open. Your heart is welcome here, no matter how bruised. We welcome you among us. All of us are imperfect, but we're here to drop our defenses and trust that what happens in this space is powerful and life-giving. Together, we affirm that this day and our being together can make each of us braver, more compassionate, and wiser than when we woke up this morning. We welcome you here. On behalf of the members of the fellowship, I extend a special welcome to all visitors who are joining us for the first time, and those of you who still feel like visitors. If you have not already done so, please fill out our visitor book at the front near the greeters, or digitally by visiting auuf.org/visitor. You may also contact our minister, Reverend Chris Rothbauer, at minister@auf.org with any questions or concerns you may have. As we prepare for our service this morning, please remember to turn your phone and other electronic devices to silent. Let us move into the service willing to be authentic with each other, honest with ourselves, and open to connection in all its forms.
Our opening words are from Ian W. Riddell. Come, come, whoever you are. Do you hear that voice calling you, calling us? That voice which calls us together here today, in this room made holy by our presence and by sacred breath we share in our singing and speaking and silence. That voice which calls us to remember that we are not alone, that we are inextricably linked to all other life, woven into a vast tapestry of existence, of which we were a powerful, integral, holy part. And just as we have been called together here today, we act as the voice, the heart, the hands of another call. The call to walk with the wanderers, sing and dance with the worshipers, proclaim the memory of those who have taken their leave, wrap the despairing and the broken in the arms of a loving community, and hold the hands of all who have broken our vows and call us back again and again to covenant and work for justice, in humility, and with steadfast faithfulness. For this, we are here together today. So, my friends, come, yet again, come.
We light our chalice this morning with these words from Amy Carroll Webb. How often we seek refuge in this sacred place from the world's trouble and pain. Today, may our lamp light the way for those who know no refuge, that we may open our minds, our arms, our hearts, our mouths to sing, come, whoever you are, wholly new, wholly true. As is our tradition, we also light a candle in solidarity for those families separated at our southern border. Today's a very special day. This morning marks the second Sunday in the season of Advent. In the Christmas tradition, actually it's the first Sunday, I'm mistaken. Second Sunday. Sorry.
Trust us.
In the Christian tradition, Advent is the beginning of the church year, recognizing the transforming power of God in the world and looking forward toward the birth of Jesus and celebration of spiritual light, And Christianity is not alone in celebrating light at this time of year. Hanukkah, solstice, and Kwanzaa all involve candles, fire, lights as part of their celebrations. Each week until Christmas, we light a new candle on the Advent wreath. The circle of greenery reminds us of the eternal cycle of all life, without beginning or end. And the candles remind us that we are each called to emit our glow amid the pain and suffering facing our world. The light of Advent grows brighter and brighter, guiding us toward personal peace, shared joy, and more love. This morning we light the second candle. We light this candle as a symbol of our longing for peace. We bring our hope into the world when we practice peacemaking. Our caring community aspires to be a source of freedom from violence and exclusion. May we become the ones we have been waiting for. As June Jordan writes, together may we strive to celebrate a lasting peace. Our opening hymn, hymn number 346, in the great hymnal, Come and Sing a Song with Me. One of the ways that we proclaim the warmth and caring of our community is by sharing our joys and concerns and milestones. If you're joining us virtually, we invite you to type a joy, concern, or milestone in the YouTube chat box. We invite those in person to, one at a time, drop a pebble into our communal bowl during the music for meditation. you have a joy or concern or milestone, to come forward one at a time and briefly share it into the microphone if you have a spoken joy or concern. First, I'd like to start by thanking everybody who participated at the auction on Friday. It was a wonderful success. Everybody who volunteered, everybody who participated in person and online, it was wonderful.
Expanding on those thoughts. This is the card that I use for bidding. I'm going to take it somewhere and get it bronzed. I have a great joy concerning the auction, and that is that it's over. And like Eric, I thank all the volunteers, the planners, especially Laura, CJ, Aisha, Jim, and especially Daryl. I also want to thank the band.
Oh, yay.
The Rangers. Keep that name in mind if you're having a party, they're your band. I certainly want to thank all the donors who gave either objects or promises of wonderful dinners or other services. They were amazing. And I want to thank the bidders who perhaps suffered from temporary insanity. Both those here, and there were 57 people in the room, and throngs online, or mini throngs, or micro throngs. And the bidders reached into their pockets in a gesture of support for this fellowship. You're maybe wondering, how well did we do? I remember, the best auction that I can remember was a few years ago when we did $13,000 and we said to each other, God, we'll never do that again. Well, we did that again and more. The silent auction, thanks to Laura, came in at $1,788. The live auction, with all the little deductions and additions, the net was $18,000. So when you add the live and the silent, that's $20,616. And I wanted to note that about $4,000 of that total came from just flat-out donations that people made. Randy sold the car and gave us the money. Cindy matched 5% of all the proceeds. Daryl matched 100% of the highest bid. And Ralph gave us a bunch of money because I think he just had some dollars burning a hole in his pocket. Anyway, tell me, later, any ideas that you had, things we could have done better, and I'll make you the leader for next year.
Well, my 31-year-old son just turned in his senior thesis, which is not a big deal, but at Reed College, which is where he goes, they have a cool tradition. And after you turn in your senior thesis, which is required of all students at Reed, you get a laurel wreath. Plastic, to be sure. But it's still very cool to see your son with a laurel wreath.
Well, I guess it's a joy, and I have a concern. I have an extra ticket for this Tuesday's, the Opelika Arts, and it is $1 Million Quartet Christmas. And it's Johnny Cash, Jerry, Lee, Lewis, Carl, Perkins, and Elvis. I don't have to give you Elvis's last name. I think you can figure that out. And it is at 7:30 p.m. to 9:30. So, if the ticket is yours, you'll have to get there by yourself. You should get there around 6:30 or so, okay? So just see me, and I should have brought the ticket with me, I didn't think of that. So anyway, my land phone is out of order, so you'll have to come by my house at 1224 Old Mill. And my concern is my youngest son, Rand, can you hear me? Is diabetic, and we were astonished. He was put on, he's very thin, he's a runner, he's training, he does marathons, he's training for a marathon now. He was put on a strict regimen, and he adhered to it, and he went back, and he was no better, and he gives himself a shot of insulin every day. And I mean, we are really, really concerned. I mean, this is just awful. So anyway, keep him in your thoughts. He's 55. And then to make things worse, I went to the credit union, and there's a lady sitting there in her wheelchair with no legs.
Okay.
Have a joy in our house. Andrea is home for the holidays, but the bigger joy also is that she just completed her master's degree in Arizona State University from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism.
Well, I guess a joy and a concern that kind of go together. My foster kitten was adopted this Wednesday, but right now the Humane Society is really full, so if you're able to foster puppies or dogs, even for a short amount of time, contact them and they can get you an application.
Good morning, my name is Nariko, and I have a distinct honor to present Project A.
Yeah.
I think everybody. Project A is a special plan that we put it together for someone who dear to our heart, who's been really generous for his or her time, time and talent for many years now. And that person has a special plan coming up, and we wanted to show our gratitude. So give me some drum roll, better than Peters. The recipient of Project A is Andrew DeFalco. And a total amount, $2,092.11.
Okay. Thank you. You're trying to get me to come back. It is.
He caught on.
Thank you very much.
So this is a joy. Next year, probably the second week, plans are afoot for reestablishing the Vipassana meditation group that we have going. So I'm looking forward to making a more formal announcement later. But I did want you to know that we're thinking about it. Thank you.
Thank you to all who shared their joys, concerns, and milestones this morning. These joys and concerns were submitted in advance, actually, we don't have it. May all the joys and concerns and milestones of this community, those shared aloud and those held in silence, be received into the care and concern of all present.
Please join me in the spirit of contemplation in whatever way feels right with these words from Michael de Vernon Boblet. May the walls of this house be strong in the face of storms, whether of winds or of words, whether of thunder or of tyranny. May the windows of this house be clear in the world's light, whether of dawns or of daring, whether of sunsets or of stillness. May the foundations of this house be firm upon the good earth, whether of soil or of sharing, whether of bedrock or behavior. May the doors of this house be wide open to all that come from afar, whether poems or people, whether songs or strangers. May this house embrace like a graceful chalice the flame it cannot define or limit, as a heart enshrines hope larger than its bearing walls. Blessed be.
The offering we take each Sunday isn't just a stale habit. It's an opportunity to recommit to this place and to this people. Our offering is an affirmation, a yes. When we give, we say yes to something we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the value of our faith. May our offering help us practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation as tools to empower our mission. To make a donation online via PayPal, please visit auuf.org/donate. Please indicate in the notes whether your donation is for your pledge or the offering. If you are writing a check, please make your check payable to AUUF with a note in the memo line about whether it is for the offering or your pledge, and drop it in the offering bowl. Or mail it to P.O. Box 669, Auburn, Alabama 36831. The offering will now be received. Grateful. Our reading today, A Place at the Table, is by Rothbauer. Where are you a pastor? It's not an uncommon question when you're chosen to do ministry in a small rural town, especially when you wear a clerical collar much of the time. I'm getting used to the puzzled looks on people's faces as they struggle to reconcile the genderqueer body in this traditionally masculine shirt. Today, though this person seems genuinely curious, and even though I'm in a hurry, I decide to stop and answer her question. I'm a pastor at the Unitarian Universalist Church. What kind of church is that, she asks, clearly puzzled by not getting the standard Baptist or apostolic Lutheran answer people come to expect around here. I've gotten used to it, though, having had to provide a question on more than one occasion. We aren't exactly the largest faith in the world, after all, and considering we're one of only 3 congregations in the region, a native here has likely never heard of us. I struggle trying to remember my elevator speech from seminary, wondering how do I convey the essence of our faith to a person in a conservative town. We're an open and inclusive religion with people of different faiths and beliefs. She's clearly processing what I've managed to come up with and searches for a response. She's met a non-Christian, and the abrasiveness of this on her preconceptions is apparent. Is that the kind of church that lets queers in? I smile internally, knowing that this is the only way she knows how to classify us, having already been lost for words. This is what she really wants to know. Are there sinners in our church? Yes, we are, I replied, and she walks away with a simple, oh. Yes, indeed, we are, I think. Straights and normies are definitely present. Every gay, lesbian, queer person is welcome in our congregation because they need church too. Come, every person of every race, ethnicity, creed, sexuality, gender, identity, and expression, sex, political belief, class, age, and ability. Let us come together, learn from one another. Let us build beloved community together. not because we're all the same. Our differences matter, but not so much that we can't find community with one another. We need places to find the sacred and the holy, to be transformed in the light of a faith that demands inquiry more than conformity, and to transform those who would see the sacredness of human identity as a sin rather than a blessing. Hopefully, one day, ours will become so common a way that I'll no longer have to remember my elevator speech during spontaneous random encounters. And yes, my random encounter, you have a place at the table too. I'll be saving a seat for you whenever you're ready.
So it's interesting that Ralph picked this as the auction sermon for the year, which means that Ralph bought this sermon at last year's auction, the 2020 auction, and said, hey, would you preach on this for the auction sermon, Reverend Chris? And well, it's kind of obvious from that reading I've done a lot of thinking on this topic, so I appreciate the opportunity to get to talk about it again. But I want to start, I usually start with one story, but today I'm going to start with two. The first takes place when I'm about 23 years old, and it was the first time I walked into a Unitarian Universalist congregation, and it was in Louisville, Kentucky. Ironically, a congregation I would, about a decade later, internship in. I walked in kind of a little lost in the world, looking for something that was beyond myself and not knowing what to find it. At that point, I still had not graduated from high school. College was still a pipe dream. But there was something I wanted, and I was hoping I might find it there. I think what I was looking for was community. So I walk in to this congregation, and I'm looking forward to meeting people who I can agree with and disagree with, and maybe even have some theological fights with. And things seemed to be going well. The Sunday service was just fine. I couldn't tell you for the life of me what was preached upon that morning. But then we went to coffee hour. And in this congregation, we had a separate fellowship hall to go into for coffee hour. So we exited the sanctuary and went into the fellowship hall, and I grabbed a little cup of coffee just to be social, and I stood in the middle of the fellowship hall for probably about 20 minutes, looking all up and down the stuff they had posted on the walls, and not a soul spoke to me. It was like I was invisible. It was like this cup of coffee had invisibility potion in it. I've, over the years, said that it was my job at the time that kept me from going back on a regular basis, but I think what really happened is I just really didn't feel welcomed there. I didn't feel like anyone had paid me any attention. I wasn't expecting the minister to just rush off of the pulpit and come meet me, but I was expecting that people would say something to me, that they would find out who I was. And that didn't happen that morning. The other story takes place in 2010. I've told a little bit of this story before, ironically in last year's auction sermon. But I was doing a master's degree over in Sheffield, England. And I decided to give the Unitarians another chance. And so one Sunday evening, because they have a morning and an evening service over there, I decided to walk downtown to this old 18th century beautiful church building. And I walked in not knowing what to expect. And strange enough, that evening they didn't have a greeter. So their minister was the one standing there at the door handing out hymnals and greeting people. Their evening services were never terribly big. I don't think very many people wanted to go downtown on a Sunday night after 3 p.m. But I felt so much different. I sat during the service, watched everything that happened, still can't tell you what was preached upon. But I do remember how I felt. Immediately after the service, I was going to leave. And the minister tells me, we have a little fellowship hall kitchen in the back. Won't you come back and join us for some tea? Yeah, they don't call it coffee hour there, they have tea. Although they tried to push coffee on me once they realized I was American. And I sat there with the minister, with the building caretaker and his wife, with the other members who had joined, which included a old Union man who had all kinds of stories to tell about standing up to oppression. And I felt like I belonged from the very first night I was there. And the only time I missed a Sunday service while I was in England was the week we went to GA in Swansea, because I loved it that much. I soon found myself enmeshed into the life of the congregation, participating in their hiking club, coming down to watch musicals with them, even though I hate most musicals, because I wanted to be with these people. They were my people. They still are my people. Which one do you think was the welcoming congregation? I'm trying to be a little easier on the Louisville congregation, having served them as an intern minister now. But when I told that story to them years later, I think it was a little bit of a shock to their system. That they had known me, but they didn't know me because they never said hello. I don't think any of them were intending to be mean or dismissive or cruel. I just think it's really easy to get so caught up in the dynamics that we become cliquish, that we forget what it means to welcome. And indeed, I have to start this by saying Unitarian Universalism has not always been welcoming. There are lots and lots of books out by UU scholars about how Black, Indigenous, and people of color, or the LGBTQIA+ population, or humanists, or women, or the poor, or non-monogamous people, have all felt at one time or another discrimination in our congregations and our association. We started as heretics, but sometimes our values are tough to live up to, even though we started out as the Christians that other Christians didn't want to be around. Sometimes it's easy to remember. It's easy to forget, rather. That it takes effort to be welcoming. Welcoming is so important because we all, at one time or another, have felt the sting of alienation, of feeling like a stranger in strange land, in the words of Harriet Tubman. And some people have known alienation more than others because of oppression and marginalization in the larger society. They come to our congregations looking for a place that will welcome them. There is a reading in the back of the gray hymnal that I take severe issue with because it tries to make the point that our differences don't matter. But they do matter. Our differences are what makes us who we are. The difference is that our differences need not and should not divide us. We should be able to welcome in people from the margins, because it is by welcoming in people from the margins we offer the promise of a beloved community. Indeed, it's the very reason why the Unitarian Universalist Association created its Welcoming Congregations program, because of the recognition that at least one class of people at the time it was created, LGBTQIA+ people, were facing severe discrimination within our congregations. The UUA Welcoming Congregations program defines welcome as striving for radical inclusion and creating spaces that honor every part of our identities, backgrounds, and experiences. Now, historically, welcoming congregations focused on LGBTQIA+ people because that was who needed to be welcomed at that point. And it's not that they don't still need to be welcomed. Of course, I wouldn't be here if someone hadn't welcomed me into their congregation. But I want to look at welcoming as creating a wider welcome. How do we create a welcome for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, for people with disabilities, for people with mental health issues, for people from different classes, both social and economic, and for people with a diversity of religious beliefs? I think first and foremost, it's about being willing to be there with the person. We welcome because we're seeking to create a new way of being. And our principles demand that we seek for a wider opening. The American novelist Amelia Barr once said that kindness is always fashionable and always welcome. And I think, even though she might not have intended it this way, that is the core of welcome, is being willing to extend kindness to people who aren't like us. But it's more than that, because kindness and good intentions will only get us so far. We have to be willing to center the needs of the people that we're welcoming. What do they need to feel welcome here? What are they asking for? And what do we need to know in order to welcome them? That means being willing to say that our needs, while they are our needs, might not be enough to welcome in a wider welcome. And it might be willing to say that we need to do things differently. Now, with all of that being said, there's a problem with the way that the word welcome is constructed nowadays, too. Because I believe that sometimes welcoming can be unwelcoming. And the essence of this problem has been expressed by various people who seem to love to express their opinions in the comment sections of newspapers. If we were truly welcoming, wouldn't we welcome the KKK or neo-Nazis? Well, let's put it this way. There's a difference between welcoming someone and embracing their beliefs. There's a reason that welcoming congregations focused on the people who were marginalized and not being welcomed into our spaces. creating a welcome for some people would by definition be creating a less welcoming community for others. Let's take the example of the KKK. If I welcomed a member of the KKK up here, what I would be saying was that Black, Indigenous people of color, Jewish people, and LGBTQIA+ people's needs are not being centered. I would be saying that we're centering the need of the KKK person to have some sort of free speech without thinking about what that means for other people. And I will always stand on the side of the people who have been marginalized. Their needs contradict those marginalized groups. There's an inherent values conflict. You heard my reading this morning, and I think it's the first time I've actually used it in a congregation I've served, because it can make people feel a little unwelcome, a little discombobulated, because it's a reminder that not everyone is going to find welcome by our way of being. And that's not okay, because I want to create a world where everyone feels welcome. But at the same time, I'm not willing to sacrifice our values in order to make someone else feel welcome at the expense of the marginalized population. Every choice we make determines who we seek to welcome. Even your choice to call me as your minister a person with multiple marginalized identities was a choice. And our values determine who we are seeking to actively welcome into our community. So I don't pretend that everyone's ready to hear a welcoming message. And while we value disagreement, every community has mores it exists by. These are changeable, but they must be acknowledged. Let me give you one that doesn't involve marginalized people for a second. My professor, a former professor of mine, Mark Morrison Reed, who taught a wonderful class on African American history within Unitarian Universalism, he once told us that if you are in a congregation that doesn't believe it has mores and ritual, get up before the congregation and announce that you're canceling coffee hour and see what happens. I don't know if I'd last here very long if I tried to cancel coffee hour. We have things we believe in. And we have to stand for something. We live into our values by creating a community that lives into our values. Both through historic justice causes such as racial justice, economic justice, LGBTQIA+ rights, and other marginalized communities, but also by creating a place that people want to come back to. This leads to a big question. How do we determine when someone's values are in conflict with our own? Well, I believe that values must be discerned in community. And there can be certain values that differ from community to community. I give you a couple of examples. 2 congregations. King's Chapel in Boston is a historic UU Christian church. They won't kick you out if you're not Christian, but that's their focus. If you go in there, you're going to have a modified version of the Episcopal liturgy. First Unitarian in Minneapolis is a historic humanist UU congregation. Once again, if you're not humanist, they're not going to kick you out. But they're also not willing to compromise their focus, because that's who they are. The problem here is both of these communities exist in larger metropolitan areas with other UU congregations around. If you've ever been to Boston, you know you practically can't drive around 2 blocks without hitting another UU congregation. There's more in Boston than the entire country of Canada. There's a little room to have some focus, whereas there might not be in smaller towns like, say, a little college town in the South. These values and mores are a question for the community, but they will always determine who feels welcome in a congregation. And conflict can occur when someone with the same values feels unwelcome, and the community must decide how to respond. A community's values change over time. Our society is much more welcoming today. It's definitely not perfect, but if you had asked me 20 years ago if I would have been able to get up at a pulpit and preach as a religious naturalist, agender, queer minister, I might have thought you were a bit nuts. UUism started as a Christian denomination, but we now welcome people of all faiths because we discerned that these were not value conflicts. We discerned that, yes, humanists are welcome here. Yes, Buddhists are welcome here. Yes, pagans are welcome here. But when a community's values change, it can create displacement in the community. Christians and other theists now frequently report feeling unwelcome in UU congregations. In fact, in some circles you might hear talk of the G word, God. When this occurs, I believe it's an opportunity to clarify our welcome. And this is even more reason why we have to be sure whether it's a conflict of values or a conflict of beliefs. Because if it's a conflict of values, there's the danger that the people with the values that we might not like might come in and make things unwelcoming, which has frequently happened in congregations. Just ask the Southern Baptist denomination, where the seminary in Louisville, I frequently heard stories of women and liberal ministers in the 70s and 80s being ousted because they were not conservative enough for the rising tide of the Southern Baptist denomination. People come here for a reason, and it's incumbent upon us to figure out why. What if they don't have another place to go, or what if this is the best place for them? This is why I make the argument that our welcome should focus on bringing in folks who have been excluded from other places. And we can ask whether there's a conflict between values and beliefs. If you disagree with me because of agender, because I'm agender or queer, that's something I can't change. But if you want to have a hearty debate about whether God exists, that's not going to affect me. And if it's simply a conflict in beliefs, this is where it helps to have a clear mission statement. Does the belief fit in with our mission? And what would people lose by not having our welcome. So this is how we live into welcome. We set a place at the table, but it's up to other people to accept our invitation. We do it because it's the right thing to do, first of all. Of course, being welcoming might help us grow, but that should never be the reason we do it. We should do it because we want to create a wider welcome in the world, because we want to create a community where other people are welcome. In fact, I once heard a Southern Region staff member remind me that growth in numbers is often the least important type of growth, because it's not something you can just do unless you're going to be a little aggressive. It comes as a byproduct from doing the right thing. So how do we welcome people? That's a large question, but I want to propose a few ways before we close. Learn more about people who are different than you. Read books about people who aren't like you. Figure out what are the books that you've been able to avoid reading because you have the privilege to. Be willing to be uncomfortable. You're not always going to like what you hear. I don't always like what I hear. But when we're willing to be uncomfortable, it means that we're willing to accept the truth of another person, that they might have something to teach us. Look for the sacred in everyone that you meet. Now that's a challenging one. I say this especially as Calvin and I have just discovered a new to us TV show called Canada's Worst Driver. It's a reality show about people who are the absolute worst drivers in Canada. And some of them are quite aggressive and scary. But I keep finding myself, as I'm watching this, looking at the best in these people and glad that they're just not being exploited. I'm glad that part of the TV show is taking them to a driving school and teaching them how to drive better. What is the sacred in them? What is the sacred in you? What is the sacred in me? First, of course, you have to define sacred, and I can't really tell you what your definition of sacred is going to be. But what in me, what in you, what in them reminds you that we're all part of an interconnected web of being? Look for ways to live into radical welcome. That might mean offering someone a hand with their groceries. That might mean helping someone get a cup of coffee. Or that might mean being willing to speak up if you're witnessing violence or prejudice. But what are ways that you can welcome people into your life? And aspire to be radically welcoming, realizing that not everyone's there yet. Not everyone is ready for the kind of world that we're dreaming of. But the more of us that get ready for it, we will eventually get there. And our practice in this congregation could lead out into the world, because the world needs people to disrupt it as it is and to create ways of showing how it could be. Marilyn Sewell once said, "I speak of radical hospitality today because there is a world out there that needs home, that needs community, and I want us to stretch spiritually, to stretch ourselves open." There are limits to our welcome in the present. But I want to challenge us today to seek a world where one day welcome will be the norm, and it won't be so radical. May it be so. Our closing hymn is numbered 121 in the gray hymnal, We'll Build a Land.
Please join me as we extinguish our chalice. You'll find the words in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please be our guest today after service for our coffee hour outside near the Bush Center. This is an opportunity to check in with folks about the service and how their week has gone. If you are not signed up for our email list, please make sure you do so to receive updates about ways to connect. You can find information on signing up at our website, auf.org/subscribe. Are there any announcements?
December 15th at 6:30 here in the sanctuary will be our Blue Christmas service. If this is your first time hearing about it, Blue Christmas is an opportunity that if you're not feeling joyous this time of year, come be authentic with us. So, exactly. Andrew says if you're feeling humbug. So please come be with us. Thank you.
I'm happy to announce that we are back to having our annual vining. So Saturday, this coming Saturday, the 11th, from 10:30 to say 2:33, we'll be having our vining. I'll send out information to the list. What the vining is, we meet first thing around 10:30. People bring all sorts of vegetables. We make a vegetarian stone soup along with the traditional stone soup story. And then we have all sorts of grapevines, and people make circular forms and add natural pods and branches and odds and ends for wreaths to take home to help celebrate the holiday season. And then we're asking people to make more wreaths than they'll actually use, so that we can use them in our greening of the sanctuary. And Laura, that's going to be right after coffee?
Right after coffee on the Sunday.
Okay, so Sunday the 12th, we'll be using those wreaths and others for our annual greening of the sanctuary right after coffee, maybe even during coffee, yeah. To make our walls of this beautiful old building look even more beautiful than they already are.
I have to tell you, I found out about the tickets. Tickets for the Tuesday concert Tuesday night. The tickets are there at the building, Opelika Arts Building, which is really Opelika High School. You get your ticket there before the concert begins, and so they're not at my house. Okay, somebody. Foul.
I sent an email out to the list about holiday helping boxes. Thank you all who have already donated. We'll be donating, or we'll be accepting donations over at the Bush Center screened-in porch for the next couple of weeks, and then we'll bring all the goods here and put the boxes together and take them to the food bank. And just to follow up a little bit on what Amy said, this is the 29th annual binding, so it's been a long-held tradition. And people bring biscuits and breads to come and eat, some desserts, and vegetarian.
Stone soup is for lunch. Bring other things for lunch too. Is at our house. I'll send out the address. What else did I forget?
Vegetarian chili.
Yes.
Do that too. So anyway, it's a fun time for kids and adults and all those folks. So be on the lookout for the announcements or talk to us. Thanks.
On the last page of our handout today, there is an announcement of my birthday party, which is going to be tomorrow evening here from 5 to 7 in the church hall. And this is your invitation, and I hope to see as many of you as possible. Looking forward to it.
Are there any other announcements? Please join us now for our sung benediction.
Go forth into the world in peace, be of good courage, hold fast that which is good. Go forth into the world in peace, love people rejoicing in the power of the Spirit. Go in peace.
Our benediction is from Robin F. Gray. As we prepare to depart, we give voice to these hopes. May we know ourselves bound in community even when we are apart. May a passion for justice burn in our lives, and may we carry the light of compassion in our hearts and in our every interaction. May we be whole in our devotion to truth, and may we always carry the lamp of peace before us. Amen. Blessed be, and go in peace. And I promise I won't cancel coffee hour.